Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Hudak. How did Will Lutz do with Sandstorm blaring in his ear?
He's been absolutely fantastic all camp. It's hard, I think he's missed 2 field goals. I believe his total numbers today came out to 48 of 50 or something.
That's crazy.
I just feel like that was so taken for granted last year. Like, not so much the kicking situation. Everyone could kind of see that was not going well, but the consistency from someone like Lutz, not just, on every field goal, but one so far out too. The amount of games he's won on, 57-yard field goals on a consistent basis. I really feel like they can kind of compensate for a lot of things, that might happen injury-wise on offense or defense, as long as their special teams unit stays as strong as it is between him and Gillikin.
I want to get into some of the particulars as sort of they break camp, but I'm curious, Maddy, just kind of how you feel as a whole, sort of like finger on pulse of the team now, having gone through the 3 weeks of camp here.
I just feel like we have a better sense of what is going to happen with the team this year and, where the strengths lie, where the weaknesses are. Whereas last year it was a lot of the quarterback wasn't decided until the second preseason game, the wide receiver group. I don't know, if there was actually a depth chart in terms of prioritization at that point. And there's still some questions here and there, but you can kind of point out where they are. Like, tight end is probably one of the question marks just comparative to other groups, but Garner-Johnson also continued to have a strong, he ended really strong in camp today. You still really haven't seen Taysom Hill and what he can do in a game setting, or, Adam Trautman, who's been, out with injury now. But the defensive line, they've seen some surgences in guys like Malcolm Roach, and that was something that I thought was undervalued last year, and how many guys they lost in free agency the offseason prior. But just having a quarterback, having a sense of who he favors on offense, what the tempo and drives are going to sort of look like, and how the defense is going to be able to respond, and just all the different looks we've seen from the Saints secondary. I feel like there's so many good things to talk about this year, and not kind of, okay, well, what exactly is wrong? That's
a great point. I mean, injuries were such an undercurrent of the whole season a year ago, and it did start in camp. Speaking of injuries, that's a good segue. Can you catch us up to speed? I know Michael Thomas wasn't there, but maybe run through the particulars there with the walking wounded.
Sure, the walking wounded. I know there was something like 16 guys out 2 days ago, and then 14 the day after that. Not so many of them participating. The kind of notable returnees were Cesar Ruiz, Taysom Hill, not Michael Thomas. And then we saw guys like Pete Werner, who we really hadn't seen in weeks at this point, Dwayne Washington, Chase Hansen, who I kind of saw where he might have gotten hurt in the Packers game a little bit. Landon Young and James Hurst were both out there. And I think people also spotted Carl Granderson at some point, but it was kind of, was that him across the room kind of thing. And Marshawn Lattimore, PJ Williams, and Alontae Taylor were doing some work off to the side. So all of that considered, that's certainly a much more positive outlook than the last 2 days or so. But yeah, Michael Thomas is really the only guy we haven't seen so far, and we really haven't seen him since prior to Green Bay. And he did the last joint practice last Wednesday there, and that was a week from today. A week ago, and hasn't done any, drills thereafter. But he did speak to the media, which was kind of surprising to us. So I be curious to see when we'll kind of get more information about that. But I'm sure we won't until, honestly, right before the season starts.
Yeah. Maddy Hudak is with the Saints camp report. The same could be said, I guess, for Jameis Winston as well, who I know said today that he'd love to play in the preseason game, and you know what? I'd love to go win $1 bajillion as well, but it's probably not going to happen. So give me a thought on Jameis today and throughout camp.
Yeah, as much as we joked about the sandstorm silent cadence drills and Will Lutz being able to perform through those, I thought today was the most poised he's looked since really kind of taking control of the offense. Can really kind of see where his time, and I feel like that's something that isn't talked about that much either, that he's formerly a number 1 overall draft pick who took a year to sit behind Taysom Hill and learn from Drew Brees, and you could see it pay off in something like today. He was very decisive and accurate today. The offense had a consistent tempo the last 2 days, and that inconsistency we saw earlier from camp at him, he's starting to really kind of find his way. You can see him wanting to take off back there. Like I said, we saw it a couple times yesterday, but it's the little things to me too, like just getting into a rhythm with Alvin Kamara and working him into the passing game. You could see the frustration on Kamara's face in a couple of those games early on last year. And the Saints offense has always just worked so well with kind of those short yardage games that they just didn't have last year. I actually looked it up. They had 307 first downs last year, which was something like 27th in the league. But on the same time, the defense held their opponents to 304. So I think that they have such a complementary team at this point that Winston has shown the ability to execute. And he probably has a higher ceiling than someone like Jimmy Garoppolo, but in the sense that he seems, reliable and trustworthy and someone that can carry such a strong defense and then also start to really grow into that role with such a good receiving core.
With Jameis, and of course the preseason game as well, I would assume, I don't know if you agree, Maddy, I don't think he's going to play. There's no reason to run him out there at this point, especially if he's in any way limited. But I know Dennis Allen was asked, so I'm curious your thoughts as well about the third preseason game. Are you trying to get starters reps, or are they trying to figure out who's going to win those last roster spots?
Well, that's what he was very coy about today. Look, it was kind of surprising to me because I feel like normally it's not that much of a secret one way or another, but I think it's probably more to do with, Winston and having to kind of give injury news on some of those guys. So, the kind of veteran players, I guess, that we haven't really heard that many updates from, that's where I could kind of see, potentially looking to just kind of get more of a depth chart out of this situation, because the fact is, we keep talking about injuries, but as much as we've seen these guys return, we also saw 16 of them drop like flies 2 days ago. So I agree with you. I don't think there's any point in Winston taking a series at this point. He knows how to play football. He's played with this offense in games before, and I saw Jalen Hurts get absolutely taken out in that Jets game, and that's exactly what can just go wrong in a preseason game with a guy, especially in their last preseason game, that's sometimes trying to get that final roster spot. And that's where you see guys get a little more reckless. So if it's me at this point, I think we can see what these starters can do, and I would like to keep them as healthy as possible moving forward. But there are a lot of guys that have shown sometimes in the preseason, sometimes in camp, but I really think at this point there have to be the separation between who's practice squad, who's cuts, and who's making this roster, and I think they still have to answer some of that.
She's Maddy Hudak, Saints Camp Report. I'm glad you texted me this because I had forgotten. Marcus Maye, we just haven't talked about it, but the DUI hearing was supposed to be today. So what walk us through this, and what are the possible scenarios there with Marcus Maye?
I had completely forgotten about it too until I think it was Saints News Network on SI posted something about it today. He was supposed to have a hearing today. It didn't really say when it was getting postponed to, but just to kind of, it's not comparative to Alvin Kamara's case for so many reasons, but a lot of the idea with him not getting suspended until next year is because his case is very difficult, for lack of a better term, and complex in a way that the DUI just is not. And looking at what they did to, Deontay Hardy in terms of discipline last year, who also had a DUI, that was a 3-game suspension, and I believe it came midway in the season, and that's a suspension that will kind of come mid-season, and I really can't say that I'm going to ever disagree with that. So that's something I kind of realized, he might be gone for a period of time, and then you start to think of, we talk about preseason games being meaningless, but, again, at the same time, PJ Williams hasn't been out there the last 2 days. If you lose Marcus Maye, now you're looking at Daniel Sorensen, Justin Evans, and JT Gray as guys to fill that role. And suddenly that playing time becomes a lot more valuable. And just based on what I've seen, at least, JT Gray seems to kind of have been taking more reps the last 2 days with Matthew and with May in that kind of two-back set. But just the versatility of all of those safeties, it's something I think they could easily carry 6 of them because they don't designate one as a nickel. And if it's me, I saw something about Bradley Roby getting potentially traded today. I think that would be a really bad idea because he actually was back there at split safety a little bit today too. He's back up in the slot and he's back up cornerback to Marshawn Lattimore. So he, to me, is such a valuable piece of that. But I think I didn't realize how valuable his versatility was until the secondaries really leaned on that. So I think that's probably the position group that can handle something like this happening the most. It's just something that, again, looking at this final game, who kind of shines in that role to potentially have to step in as a starter for a 3-game stretch.
Yeah, the Marcus Maye situation is something we'll definitely have to watch. Maddy, great job. Thanks for letting us bother you so much the last 3 weeks during camp. We appreciate all the work. We'll be in touch soon, all right?
So my pleasure. All right.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.